Thank you very much for the invitation. We're very pleased to be able to offer some thoughts on actually the rare treat of talking about the future of intelligence rather than talking about the here and now. So the way that the presentation will work is that Ian will talk for the first half, and then I will bring up the back half. So over to you, Ian.
I'm conscious of time restraint, so I would like to highlight 4 future states which, if present, may offer future policing a high degree of assurance that its intelligence architecture, its accompanying policy, its intelligence organizational culture both inform and drive successful intelligence strategy and organizational delivery. Before I begin, please allow me to provide some context. The future state requires policing to revisit and learn from its past. Now, I was involved in a 10-year review of police intelligence failings, detailed in HMIC, judicial inquiry, serious case reviews, and IOPC reports. And they reveal some consistent themes associated with intelligence shortcomings. So a failure to collect, a failure to provide access, a failure to share, a failure of understanding or analysis, and finally a failure to action. Now, none of the findings reveal insurmountable problems, but in a future state, policing intelligence will learn from those lessons. It will not respond by creating an even greater administrative burden or a more prescriptive policy. It will design and embed smartly the required mitigating practices, avoiding over-assurance and micromanagement. So what about the future state of intelligence? I'm not going to offer an exhaustive list here. I've only got 8 minutes. So what I do offer is what I believe are 4 areas that may offer the best chance to both enhance and sustain effective intelligence collection and intelligence-led operational action. So let's move on to the first one. So firstly, technical and human covert investigative powers in the future will be deployed in support of both low and high policing activity. The Regulation Investigative Powers Act of 2000, the Investigative Powers Act of 2016 have secured greater legal and rights-based compliance. Since the enactments, they, and in particular RIPA 2000, have accelerated specialist reorganisation, including the establishment of dedicated source units, of covert authority bureaus, and other dedicated surveillance structures. Enhanced training, more intrusive dedicated supervision, vetting, and judicial oversight have also contributed to securing an ethical investigative powers regime. But what about the future? A future successful covert strategy will rebalance current covert activity from a position where it primarily operates at the margins of police organisations. A future state will re-engage the wider workforce, deploying high policing methods at a community safety, at a volume crime level, and related social problems. The future state intelligence approach will value efforts to secure greater covert coverage, operational capacity and capability, as much as it does in securing legal compliance and passing IPCO inspections. So it's not simply about compliance, it's about coverage, capacity and capability in our future state. The future state will have reversed the decline in covert authorities that we've seen over the last 20 years for covert human intelligence sources and directed surveillance. There will be a step change in the resourcing of covert units, an increase in investments of longer term operations, an expansion of informant reward budgets, which have been significantly declining over recent years. And there will be an enhanced awareness and active engagement of covert policing amongst the wider workforce, including uniformed staff. Police covert intelligence, with its newly acquired skills, technologies and resources, will continue to police ungoverned spaces, collecting both the real world and the virtual offender information intelligence. Secondly, the future state will offer a culture of both valuing and investing in frontline intelligence contributors. There will be clear and resourced intelligence pathways supported by extensive training and sustained by continuous professional development. Promotion and career progression will be reweighted towards the provision of evidence of engagement and experience within intelligence. There will be a strategy which accommodates staff development outside of the organisation with flexible pay and conditions and organisational re-entry points or redocking points for those staff who've left the organisation, picked up new skills, for example, in analysis or other forms of intelligence management or information management. So those further enhanced skills will be welcomed back. Staff vocational training will be further strengthened by bespoke postgraduate specialist intelligence degree apprenticeships, contributing further to the professionalisation of intelligence staff roles. Bespoke qualifications that, for example, my department of LCAPS does, such as the MSc in covert investigation, special intelligence, will be the norm across other academic institutions and intelligence departments, and not simply the exception. Thirdly, in a future state, policy will be anchored in a comprehensive academic knowledge base. The future intelligence state will reveal a college of policing's research map that is bursting with ongoing research relevant to the police intelligence community. Similar to the USA, the UK will have a national intelligence university with fully funded scholarships. It will have an NPCC intelligence portfolio that's responsible for all current intelligence collection and management related subgroups. A joint up approach, effectively managing and integrating governance and practice. UK policy development in the area of intelligence in the future state will be less defensive, less likely to be developed in response to outlier incidents or organisational inertia. It will be responsive and adaptive to new operational opportunities falling out of a wider societal changes. It will leverage disruptive technologies. Policy development will be based on widening practitioner consultation, informed by embedded academic police partnerships. Research will be about contesting the dominant discourse. What works, what does not, and what could work better will be better understood and underpin operational intelligence practice. An intelligence futures think tank made up of dedicated staff drawn from policing, industry and academia will encourage innovation, increase practitioner engagement, promote and generate high quality research around current and emerging policing demands. And fourthly, agile and responsive processes for intelligence collection to action. At both a strategic and tactical level, the governance and management of intelligence will be positioned to be fleet of foot and less inert. It will be more focused on encouraging exploitation of operational opportunities rather than simply avoiding risk. The future state of intelligence will be more willing to explore new or innovative ways of doing things. Decision inertia will be robustly challenged. Risk entrepreneurs and precautionary approaches will be listened to, but not permitted to dominate or even silence the innovators. Processes will be streamlined and intelligence management processes regularly reviewed to ensure they are enablers to activity. Intelligence will be more quickly shared with those who need it, in the format that they need it, and in the place they need it. Organisational policy will encourage timely information sharing and intelligence access, and have embedded practices that are geared to working with criminal justice, public and the private sector partners in delivering data and intelligence-led operational solutions. Policy that hinders operational process and activity will be robustly scrutinised and challenged whenever and wherever appropriate. So those are the four areas of the future state which I think will take us further in the world of intelligence. I now hand over to my colleague, Professor Rob Dover, who will highlight some developments that have a further potential to radically transform policing intelligence practices going forward.
Thank you, Ian. So as John said at the beginning, and Rick did as well, we won't be focusing on technology. So here's my technology slide. So as a reality of the future going forward, is that cyber will become, and is currently and will increasingly be, a component of all organized criminal activity. That breaks down into these following areas, which is that we're seeing the use of digital coins and NFT, which is non-fungible tokens, so essentially digital assets used in the laundering and processing of the proceeds of crime. We also see that, and John made this point right at the beginning of his talk, which is that the ability of the criminal to shape the environment. So the increasing sophistication of deep fakes and also the use of encrypted communications are really important to this future space. So deepfakes allow them to shape the operational environment. Academics and practitioners are quite focused on social media intelligence, which is actually in the open domain, but actually I've seen very recently with the EncroChat interception, actually it's these encrypted P2P communications that are the battleground, the information battleground that we will see being increasingly important. The second point is quantum computing, and here's Google's quantum computer. The importance here is not the whizziness of the widget. It's actually that this computer, when challenged with a set of calculations that would have taken IBM's best supercomputer 10,000 years to solve, did it in 200 seconds. So it's 158 million times quicker than the leading edge conventional computer. What that tells us is that any cryptography that is placed on any device is now brute force broken, or can be brute force broken by quantum computing. It's no surprise then that states have tried to capture this area as being what in the UK we would describe as a list X technology, i.e. one that's closed because it's so strategically important. But if you can imagine what a rogue state or a international sort of narco conglomerate might do with this technology, it's quite stark. But it does also allow us to do more sophisticated types of equation and algorithm in terms of outlier identification. The last area in terms of this sophisticated use of techniques, and also the problem of encryption with existing types of computer platform, is that investigators will increasingly have to go into digital biometrics, i.e. trying to find proxies to essentially find a digital fingerprint that isn't a smoking gun, but one that will lead them to possible suspects through the use of technology and how people precisely are using it. There is, I think, at the next point, an important trend we need to understand, which is that the tools of globalization, being this network-enabled communication and finance, for example, is being used both by those who wish to advance globalization, i.e., the mainstream of Western discourse, but also those who are anti-system and anti-globalization. It's a key battleground to understand that this technology and information technology is now really the battleground between those who are seeking to enforce and those who are seeking to transgress. And this in and of itself feeds into a wider debate, which I think is more germane to those who sit within that tag of millennial or Generation Z, which is that they don't understand themselves as being geographically tied. Therefore, to evoke this notion of policing with consent because you identify with your society, community, nation, is tested by these technological and societal advancements. Can I have the next slide, please, Ian? And then my own views on trends in staffing really are around the inflexibility of the command structure that we see within intelligence organizations. Command structures are there for all very good reasons. So within intelligence cultures, be they in security intelligence or in law enforcement intelligence, they all come with packages of jargon and experience. And of course, that jargon is both useful as shorthands for people within that community to understand what each other are talking about, but it's also a gatekeeping function. That is to include and exclude people based on whether they are within or without that community. So I've always thought that the way to improve intelligence function is actually partly to break down those gatekeeping functions, but it's also around taking proportionate risks. So in a paper I wrote last year, I advocated for fewer functions to be held on the high side in high classification, and for those only to be the absolute core functions held on high side, and for actually there to be a devolvement down of more low side activities in order that you could bring in people who wouldn't be capable of being vetted, but who were deep experts in those areas. That is a risk, clearly a risk, and the agencies of all types are risk averse because they sort of necessarily have to be because of the information they use. But it's those risks that you can carefully model and work up that I think are really very essential to improving the agencies and enforcement agencies' disposition against organised criminals in particular. So that's the end of my bit. We'll look forward to questions later on.